Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing okay this evening. Let me check my volume. This one is going to be relatively fast. I'm going to try to do this in 10 minutes. I'm setting a goal. 10 minutes. Let's cut this down just a little bit. I'm setting a goal for 10 minutes because I have other stories I want to do today, and I don't want to linger too much on this one. I just want this to be something that's out. Look, Russiagate, I'm calling this Russiagate as a tactic of the pseudo-left media, making the point that the true left must focus on real world things that people actually care about. The reason I say that, my mom, I think I've said this before, my mom worked pretty much, from the time she was, 16 to 17 till the time she was in her 50s. And because she was working when she was younger, she wasn't paid much. And you're talking about working for like 20 or 30 years, and you end up with, it's more than minimum wage, but it's not much, especially when you're talking about raising a kid. You end up in this thing where you're on this constant hamster wheel that even though you're putting a full day's work, what you're getting is a pay that doesn't necessarily allow you to make basic ends meet. And I am not talking about living high off the hog and eating steak every other day. No, I'm just talking about a basic living. If you work in this society, shouldn't you be able to take care of yourself with the work that you're doing? Not to mention, she worked for the city, doing somewhat of a vital service. And you would think, again, if you're working for the city doing a vital service, that the city itself would regard you as such, as having a vital service or doing a vital service. It would make sure that how you're living, you have access to your basic needs. Her son gets sick. Now, you have somebody who's already on a hamster wheel, barely making ends meet, and now they have to deal with a kid that's ill. And in dealing with a kid that's ill, where she worked, the city, threatened her that if she takes any more time off to check me in the hospital, she will be fired. Now, she has health insurance working for the city, but keep in mind, you're getting ticked with a bill over and over and over and over again. Meaning, if you are already just barely making ends meet, how are you paying the bill even if you have gainful health insurance? Health insurance is not the end-all, be-all, which is somewhat of one of the problems with Obamacare. It's not just about access. It's also about whether or not you're going to have to pay $1 million as a bill if you use that access. Yes, health insurance is nice, but it doesn't necessarily mitigate bills, especially if it's something that's major. Let's say the person gets cancer or some kind of heart disease or something else that requires multiple visits. You're getting hit with that. You're getting dinged with that, especially if you're spending time in the hospital. Do you realize I was in a hospital and a doctor comes in, takes my blood pressure, leaves, and sends a bill for like $100? There's something wrong with your system when it's organized in that way, where people can live a life doing everything that the society tells them that they're supposed to do from the standpoint of working and gainfully employed and still not make ends meet. She ends up trying to work 2 jobs, another job, this job, that job, borrowing money from Peter in order to pay Paul, who she had to borrow from in order to pay Peter back. When I got to the point of the age of maturity, I of course, wanted my own place and everything else, with the caveat that I had to deal with this thing of healthcare. So Medicare, Medicaid, great. Those things are awesome, except for the donut hole. The donut hole being, if you want to get a job, you may lose access to those 2 services. So you have an option. You can either be poor and get Medicare and help Medicaid, which will pay for your bills, or you can work and go into debt. Which one you want? You want to be in rank poverty, or do you want to just have massive amounts of debt? By the way, massive amounts of debt from healthcare, because even though you're working, you're probably not going to get a job where you're working anywhere major because you've just gotten out of high school. So any job that you get is not going to be adequate to pay for the medical bills or the other bills that you're going to accrue just from your medical history. It's a donut hole. You're fucked in either case. Rank poverty or rank poverty. In this case, in bills. You can say to some degree those things are almost the same. I, of course, chose the rank poverty. And then eventually gets my finished school after like 10 years because it was in and out the hospital. And then I think it was one situation where I ended up without health care for a while, even though having kidney failure. We have an odd system in the way that we organize ourselves. And as a collective, I don't understand why we as a society look and say, yes, this is a good idea. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I am not the only one who in this case. I may experience this in different ways, but other people also experience life in this particular way. I'm just a person. When you look around, you find out that the majority of the country, half of the country, I'm not going to say majority, half of the country, either is in poverty or low wage. And people say, you know, pull that up. I have the thing. There's a Common Cause article that even goes into it. This idea of not having access to the things that you need. Barely having access to the things that you need. Running on a hamster wheel. What is it, 63% of the country don't have access to $500 if they ended up with a bill. Let's say your car breaks down, it's $500. 63% of the richest country on the planet doesn't have access to the $500. This is horrendous. 95% of the jobs created under Obama were part-time or low wage. This is horrendous. Black wealth under Obama cratered. The indignity of the president jumping in front of Wall Street to protect them, throwing his body. Don't hit him! I got him! Don't hit him! While letting homeowners go bust. Many African Americans by far had their money in housing. That was the place where they had their money. When that went bust, money went with it. Why am I bringing this up? Why am I bringing this up? I started this talking about the Russiagate stuff. Why am I bringing all of this up? These tales of horror that is to live in American life. That many people, a lot of people, half of the people, even more than half of the people, are experiencing on a daily basis. Day in, day out. Trauma, difficulty, working in a job where you have no agency, barely making ends meet, even in the capacity of working in that job where you have little to no agency, being told that you are free, go out and have your freedom as you work on this hamster wheel in a job that you don't particularly like. Freedom, isn't it beautiful? Liberty, fraternity. Why am I bringing this up in the context of Russia? The previous president, every mic that he can get his hands on, every mic that he could find, he gripped it with both hands. And as the wind blew in his hair that wasn't waving because it was close to his head, he screamed, hope and change. Hope and change. Loud, unabashed, head to the clouds, change. That's what he screamed. And you had a population in this country that felt it from flesh to bone. Nobody even knew what the hell he was talking about, but they felt it. He less cared about what he was talking about because it was an advertising campaign. For all intents and purposes, he could have been selling blue jeans or Coca-Cola, but he went out there and did it. He sold it, and people believed it because he was black. He was different. He was fundamentally different than anything that came before him. So when he is screaming hope and change, they look at his race and they identify that this is change. This is indeed what he says it is. He's black. He's black. God damn it, he's black. It has to be change. He's black. I've had people who I work with who say, I voted for him because he was black. I thought it was going to be different. I voted for him because he was black. What does that mean? Interrogate it. What does it mean? Like, if I say hope to you, what does that mean to you? And the catch is, it is going to mean something different from one person to the next, to the next, to the next, with a certain thread that this is going to be something different. Change means different. They want it change, and they want it in this kind of euphoric, emancipatory way. Otherwise, you wouldn't join it with the term of hope. was an advertisement. Beautifully done. Politically savvy. But what does it mean to the people themselves? And what is it like for the people who got behind that narrative of hope and change? Black, white, gay, straight, Hispanic, even some races. Got behind that idea of hope and change and put him in office. What happens to that coalition when it is not what he says it is? When his narrative of what hope and change was completely different than what the hopeful and the euphoric voted for. When the next person for the Democratic Party runs, do they believe that the public forgot hope and change? Do they believe it? Do they honestly believe that the public that was so hopeful and wistful when they voted in Obama because of that particular message, do they believe that they forgot it when Hillary Clinton ran? Why am I bringing this up in the context of a Russian investigation? I'm bringing this up in the context of Russia because I kind of want to get across this point. The public wanted change. Make America great. It's no different than hope and change. It's just cut for a Republican audience as opposed to a Democratic audience. Ultimately, what the public wants is the same. They want something different. You ran a candidate screaming at status quo. They didn't want it. They wanted something different. Nobody is going to forget hope and change. And they're not going to forget it in the context of remembering that they didn't get it. That's what you called for. That's what you screamed for. That's what you told them. And then at the end of the day, over the course of the 8 years, it was something fundamentally different than what you said. Now, how is the public to take an advertisement campaign in which you told them one thing and did something else? And when the next person decides to run, yeah, that's a headwind, especially when that person's name is Clinton and nobody already, they disbelieve her. I bring up hope and change. I bring up the misery of the middle class and the lower class and the wealth and ridiculous amounts of wealth of the rich. No, with that being there, with the lower class being there, because they're trying to make this point. The public wanted something different because of the status of the public. What I grew up in, what my mom went through, what I went through, is essentially the same thing as people all throughout the United States. Those people in that particular situation was looking for something different. And in looking for something different, they clinged on to, oh, hope and change. Oh my God, he's going to give me something different. And they didn't get what they wanted. Same thing with Trump, flailing to the left and to the right, looking for something. They cheated the guy on the left, so they ended up with the guy on the right. He's different. He's not black, but he looks different also. Ultimately, Trump is just a Republican doing just what a Republican would do. But they wanted something different. The Gallup poll that was released showed that the public didn't care about the Russia stuff. Didn't care. On the list of concerns, it is extraordinarily low on that list at the very end. Economy, unemployment, gap between rich and the poor, foreign trade deficit. You have to come all the way down here to find Russia. Below, advancements of computer technology. The public doesn't care about this. If you are barely making ends meet on a hamster wheel, if you are working multiple jobs like friends of mine, or like my mom was at the time, or if you are collecting Social Security that doesn't make ends meet in the least, if you are barely getting by, working hard, barely getting by, buried in debt that you shouldn't have to deal with, but you're dealing with because of the way the public or your political leaders have arranged the order of things. So you have $50,000 on your back at 21 years old just for the temerity of getting an education. Hey, that's supposed to be a positive thing. We should want our kids to get an education. But no, we tell our kids that if you want to do something in this world, you need an education. Great. Oh, and by the way, if you want to get an education, we need to put $50,000 on your back. Certainly that's not right. Or if you're ill, meaning if you did nothing at all to bring about your particular situation, you were just born this particular way, you are saddled with a lifetime of poverty or debt. Congratulations, just by virtue of who you are. I'm saying that is not the way our world should be. And people who work hard, are somehow infirmed, try to break their back in order to create the society to which we have, whether it's getting your coffee, whether it's making sure your air is clean, whether it's making sure your city runs, making state runs. Just people who go about their day not necessarily making buku bucks, but they make our world run. We should pay more attention to making sure that those people are intact. And it's not making sure those people are intact. It's to some degree why we got Trump. Nobody cares about this Russia nonsense because those people have real lives. And in the capacity of those real lives, those people to some degree struggle in the capacity of those real lives. Which means that if you're telling them about Russia and something that intervened into this country, it wasn't Russia that put $50,000 on their backs. It wasn't Russia that made it difficult when my mom was working to try to get health care. It wasn't Russia when people who are infirmed are trying to make ends meet. None of those things were Russia. All of those things were American built and American made. The stress and the misery, the 63% of people not able to afford a $500 bill, that wasn't Russia. That was America. That was people who were in positions of authority or people who could exploit either labor or workers in order to advantage themselves magnificently. That was here. Nothing to do with Russia. Our qualms, our issues is here. And the public acknowledges as such and doesn't care. This issue with Russia is a democratic argument, and it's to some degree a media reality. They scream, they cry, they complain, and they've done it for 2 years, and ultimately they didn't budge the dial at all. If you ask people whether or not you should secure your elections, they will say yes, you should secure your elections. But if you ask them if they care, no, I care about not having money in my bank account. I care about not being able to make ends meet. I care about the homeless guy that's taking a dump on the street in California. Those are the things I care about. That doesn't begin and end with Russia. Russia is a democratic argument that will be used as a bludgeon to attack the left. The pseudo-left that has taken this up will be considered to be, to some degree, a tool of moderates in order to try to stem the tide of actual change in this country from the left. If Hillary Clinton didn't lose because she was status quo, then she lost because of Russia, which makes that election to some degree invalid. This is the logic of the argument. It's being conflated. Attack on democracy is not an attack on democracy. It was a spearfishing where Podesta had his information taken. Now, no one wants to be honest about that, because if you be honest about it, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. When the public got to see the reality of what Hillary Clinton was and how shady the Clinton Foundation was, the Clinton Foundation was a slush fund, and that they were cheating Bernie Sanders, they recoiled in horror at the reality. At the reality. When they could see her for what she was, they recoiled and went the other way. No one likes to say that. A Democrat doesn't want to say that when the public saw Hillary Clinton for what she was, they freaked out and voted Trump. Nobody wants to say that. So it's easier to say there was an attack on democracy. Great. I'm making the point that from the standpoint of the left, this is somewhat of a nonsense proposal. And the reality of it is the public doesn't care. If you're a progressive, if you're a lefty, if you're running for any office at all, the focus needs to be on real things, policy, things that matter, things that touch the public in a way that positively affects their life. You know what would have magnificently helped? If everybody had universal health care. Do you know how many bills I would have avoided? Do you know how many bills people avoid all around the United States if they didn't have to deal with insurance companies making profit off of their broken bones and their illnesses? Focus on real things. That's the only point of this video. The public doesn't care about the Russia stuff. That is an argument of the Democratic Party. That should not be an argument of the left. Focus on real things. All right, I'm going to end this. This one has gone longer than I wanted. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the Patreon. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in a few moments. Well, see you in a few minutes. Bye-bye.